чекаємо пані Наталію, Artemchuk. О, роздягайтесь, сідайте.
Так, ви можете поки ви.
Але пальтішечко, ні, нічого страшного, все окей. У нас, ми в такому ізі режимі. У нас дуже розслаблена тема.
Так. Перевіряють, не перевіряють. Таке.
Good afternoon, Ukraine Media Center Ukrinform continues its operation. My name is Vashchuk, and today we will be talking about our money, the taxes, and how they are being gotten. We will talk about the tax audits. We have an interesting company of people who want to discuss this. Here with us are Vashchuk, Business Ombudsman of Ukraine, Gennadiy, Chizhikov, Chamber of Commerce and Industry. So I'm not gonna call the titles. Oksana, Shvets, American Chamber of Commerce, Natalia, Artemchuk, European Business Association, Yuliya, Drogovoz, Ukrainian League of Industrialists and Entrepreneurs, who is joining us online. Also joining us are Myroslav, Laba, Union of Ukrainian Entrepreneurs, and Oleg, Getman, Economic Expert Platform, also joining us online. We're seeing both of our experts right on the screen. And also we're waiting for Natalia to join us. Natalia Zavadska-Muslova, who is Deputy Director of Communications Department of the Federation of Employers of Ukraine. So first we will have the presentation by Mr. Roman, and then one by one everybody will get an opportunity to give the comments, and then we'll proceed to questions and answers from the floor. So let's start with you, Mr. Roman. Thank you very much. So why the tax audits? Last year we were making the report based on the investigation of SM Corp that became present in the autumn of year 22 after the peak of hyper blocking of the invoices. We've seen that the tax audits issue was becoming more and more pressing, having renewed after the quarantine and after the beginning of the full-scale invasion, so the tax audits were resumed. So in the beginning of this process we decided to check within a couple of years, starting from 2006, how does it look in Ukraine and in what way does it influence the business. So we've learned the wave of more than 1,500 administrative complaints. We've analyzed about 50 statistical indicators of state tax service. We've studied the reports of the tax administrations. We've filed some reports to the courts with regard to the tax administration, and we had meetings with the business stakeholders, including the organizations represented here today. So what is the way the things are happening in Ukraine now? Currently, we see certain presumption of the evil will by the tax administration. So the taxpayer is the potential violator of the tax law rather than a taxpayer who complies with the laws and who may commit some mistakes which can be rectified and the taxpayer can be helped. So we've asked what is the level of trust, and the trust of the businesses to regional tax authorities is 13%, and to the central tax administration is almost 19%. So it's not a comprehensive review, but at least those who are working in this area, this is how they see this. So how should the things should be? The presumption of goodwill. We should provide an opportunity for the goodwill taxpayers to rectify their mistakes and focus on those who really have some evil will. So what do you think? In Ukraine there is a huge tax audit systems, and then there are dozens of thousands of cases in the courts and the proceeds from them are only 1% from accrued financial obligations. 99% plus of Ukrainian businesses pay their taxes voluntarily. At the same time, when there are tax audits, you see the actual extra or emergency audits and planned audits. So in 75% of the cases, you get the so-called act. The act means that there is a violation. And in years 22-23, this indicator has grown to 85%. You see, starting from year 2017, the amount of reports decreased 6 times, down to 1.3%. Comparing to document audits, emergency document audits, the proportion comparing to the year 2017 changed twice, is reduced twice as less. So if there are so much audits, so much inspections, which recalculate your tax obligations, it seems like it should gap all the holes in the budget. But we see from there is a small rain from the big cloud. You see they add some obligations in amount of 90 billion, 75 billion, and those drops in the bottom are the budget proceeds. I think that there should be some small tubes between those years, because the court proceedings last for years, and sometimes the additionally accrued obligations are accrued on a 5-6 year basis, but sometimes they amount to 16% from what was either found out or just randomly added during the inspections. In our communications with the State Tax Service, with the Ministry of Finance, because we also discussed the content of this study with them, they said it's not only the administration of tax fraud, but it's the problem of the courts. The courts are overloaded. This is why the courts don't come up with any decisions or awards. And the question is as follows: if it's the tax administration who submits dozens of thousands of cases to the courts, or the businesses deem it so unfair that they file to the court, so it's the problem that is generated by the system. So like they spam the courts with this amount of cases, and then they're saying like, okay, so what can we do with the courts? So what are the prospects of the courts? For example, those complaints that we're getting within at least the last 7 years. 1,430 complaints, from which we've accepted 1,152. We're quite selective. If we see that the company is gray or black, we don't even consider it. We don't defend them. So 1,152 complaints. And in tax administration, we've closed 35% successfully, where the state tax administration said, oh, oops, something went wrong, and they've just cancelled it. However, more cases ended up in the court, 644, and only 15% of them were solved in favor of the state. But again, there was a lot of hassle, a lot of rush. But there was a major part that the tax administration itself said, well, oops, there's something wrong, and only 15% from what they decided to defend, they were able to win. So what should we do about this? In the Council of Business Ombudsman, we like the constructive approach. We don't only mention the problems, but the solutions too. So first of all, a general Copernicus plot, so to say, the compliance with principles of fair and just application of the law. The declaration, we've already come up with the project, with the draft that we are discussing with different associations, with the government agency. I think it will be in our website today together with the report. And it's about proportionality, transparency, all those good things. But among them, there is very important principles. So consultant first. So talking in European Union language, consult first. So before you penalize somebody, just check whether there was a technical error. Enter into dialogue with the company, consult them. If anybody asks the questions, I will give you examples from our practice, how all those problems can be solved easily. So preventive communication, we have to add it into the to the procedures of Ukrainian tax agencies to avoid this surprising situation where when communication with the business is an indicator of treason. Like, this is the first step to corruption. Like calling back to the company and asking them, haven't you made an error? Haven't you made a mistake there? So the tax administration personnel and other officials should be given the right to reason. Increase the role of legal departments during the phase of inspection or audit, whether that case has any prospect. Should they submit 5 appeals to the Court of Appeal, or should they make it to eventually lose the case? So this is where the legal department should tell their colleagues, hey guys, stop, you're not gonna make a lot of success with this, let us save the energy and use our efforts for something alternative. Implementation of alternative ways of solution, like tax mediation. We've heard that like we don't have people for we don't have enough people for mediation. We cannot add another 100 people to our staff because it will take more budget funds. But what requires the Ukrainian law for mediation is the training course that lasts like 90 hours. Get the people you have, like send them to the training course and then send them to this mediation job. Well, development of ambitious KPIs, the efficiency indicators. Here we come up with an interesting situation. There are no permanent criteria for evaluation of tax. Somebody's listening carefully, right? So they just proclaim something is reported, something is changed. So starting from year 2017, you cannot track any efficiency there. We need some clear public markers for them. There is the draft law that is supposed to be adopted. More transparent information again, so we could compare year to year. So we could compare the core statistics with the tax administration statistics. To do that, we need transparent information and permanent feedback from the entrepreneurs, from the businesses. In national strategy, it's mentioned that we need such survey like once in 2 years. We think it should be happening more frequently, but it shouldn't be conducted or ordered by the tax service when they order the evaluation of themselves. So this is what we suggest to improve the situation. Thank you very much. As a person with traumatic experience of blocking the tax declarations, it would be my pleasure to listen to all of you, and I would like first to listen to Mr. Gennadiy. Well, first of all, I would like to thank the Office of the Ombudsman for their systemic work, and the Business Ombudsman plays a very important role, the role of trust, because not a lot of organizations, with all due respect to all of those present here, well, it's not like is respected in the same way at the top level. But again, business ombudsmen, when they say something, they mean business. And today's report, I would send it to all of our tax administration, to all of our businessmen as a reminder, just as a like New Year's postcard. As a person from a business, I don't understand when a lot of money is being spent, like the immense amounts of money are being spent for 1% efficiency. Well, I definitely am joking, because tax system is serious, it's necessary, it's important, but there's a number of questions. Like Mr. Roman was mentioning, when we are being contacted by the business, the organization through which the biggest amount of money possible in our country goes through, and in that organization, that organization has no manager, has no director, it only has acting director. I'm looking at my organization, like you're managing huge amounts of money, or for example, budgets, lives depend on you, and you don't have authority of the director who is supposed to make decisions. I'm treating Miss Tatiana Kyrienko with huge respect, but I'm trying to say a different thing. The businesses are asking, and I don't know what to answer. Secondly, we talk a lot to our partners, to the members of the chamber who were relocated abroad, and I'm curious. The companies that work in the United States, this is the statistics, so 95% of the businesses, they don't even know what tax administration is. They were never physically visiting the tax administration, like more than 95% don't even know what it is. Then companies that move to European Union, I'm asking them, so how are you guys feeling? And they're like, it's alright. And another question is, so what's the story with the taxes? And they're like, they say, that's something incredible. Like, what do you mean? They're calling me, they apologize twice, and they say, it seems like you might have committed a small mistake there. Can you please check this and that line? It's like they're just advising, and then we don't ever meet. They thank me, I thank them, and this is the partnership, because business in a country that is waging the war wants to pay taxes. They want to support the army, but we need the same amount of respect. If we trust the state, why the state in the same way should not trust the businesses and help them? When we ask the question about the urgency, in our country we should have a cult of business, because business is like art. Some is painting, some may be writing books, and to some the God gave that gift of doing business, to fulfill the market with the new goods or services. We should pray on those people. We're praying when we go to a museum where we see the works of the artists. Why shouldn't we pray on somebody who dedicates their all time to produce something made in Ukraine that adds more to the quality of our life? That's incredible. Those are the people who we should, well, not pray on them, but we should support them, we should assist them. So all these systems should be changed. Now we're saying we're going to European Union, and the businesses understand that the fashion to be honest, to be fair, just, that will be the main fashion, because it will be difficult to get grants otherwise to work with the foreign banks, and businesses understand it, and our government agencies who are involved in these inspections and audits should understand it too. So we formulate together this new structure of our relations. Again, when Ukrainian businesses, when we do, well, we have this business barometer, and we ask our members what are the problems. They say that the first problem is the tax audits that existed 10 years ago, 20 years ago. This is some rudimentary things, and I'm thinking to myself, are we going to work like this in 10 years again? That's incredible, that's impossible. But again, 99% and 9%. There are specific dedicated agencies who can do those audits by themselves. We were thinking it would be Bureau for Economic Security, who will be doing this, watching their computer screens when some businesses violate the rules of the game, but we stand on this position that everybody should comply with the rules, and when you see some violation, just come to them, but don't draw the attention of the whole country to this. And something else that's probably more related or less related to our tax administration, but we have very bad practice in place, because image is very important for the business, just like any other person who is sitting here in this room. Whenever somebody says that they did or did not pay taxes and it's not proved by the court, it's very bad. Like, after the court proves it, then you may only state that people like failed to pay the tax. We should appreciate our businessmen and treat them with respect, because, as I like to say, any 5-star hotel can be turned into 2-star within one night thanks to one company. And then try to leave the image of 2-star hotel all the way up to 5 stars. And the same story with the business. First they are being denigrated, and then you have to prove you were not wrong. Well, I would like to thank the team. I would like to thank Mr. Roman for the great job they're doing, and I will pass this information to all of our members, so we join our efforts and fight for our rights. So before we give the floor to another speaker, I would like to ask you just quite briefly, if Ms. Nadia Zavadska has joined us, I would like to ask her to take her seat, but if not, then we have Ms. Yuliya Drogovoz, and we would like to give the floor to her. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, really, for the great job you've done. It's quite intense and powerful, because really the first thing is blocking of accounts, and another thing is the tax audits. They've already started for a lot of businesses. What can I say? I wanted to support Mr. Gennadiy in his statement that it shouldn't be business who should be first, but it's not only about business, but it's about the job, so they should have responsibility. Someone should bear responsibility for the businesses stopping their operations. There's a lot of things. We know how the administration of businesses influences the business operations. First, it's violation of their rights. We should pay attention to them. But again, let's not forget there are human rights, the human freedoms and basic principles. They were just completely forgotten. And what should also be changed, the approaches, the philosophy, the principles of interaction between taxpayers and, in this case, state tax administration, Ministry of Finance, the tax committee, tax and finance committee in the parliament. We should make a 180-degree turn, and first of all we have to comply with the rights and freedoms. A couple of years ago we were struggling to transform the tax administration into a service, so we were hearing this slogan for 10 years or even more. But before there were declarations, now we don't even have declarations, right? So the attitude to the taxpayers is like to the violators, and in all issues related not only to checks but also to administration. First of all, in the first place, there are the rights of the audit agencies, and the taxpayers, they only have obligations, so we keep losing our rights. And what we're observing now during the checks, I was mentioning it, and I would like to emphasize it once again, that the question is not even about the acts, but when those acts are disputed on different levels, the decisions are being taken in favor of the authorities, of the agencies themselves, so we don't see any percentage that would be significant for the taxpayers. I mean, in terms of any court awards that would be made in favor of the taxpayers. If previously we had some statistics that allowed us to struggle for those indicators, to fight for them, when we could solve something at the level of administrative dispute, currently we see that all the awards at the level of regional tax administrations and central tax administration are taken in favor of the administrations, and the courts, they make positive awards to make sure that the rights of the taxpayers are not violated. And another thing is blocking. Blocking substitutes the tax audits, because all of the problems of audit, even if audit added something to made some additional accrual, in the majority of the cases a lot of these issues should be solved by the commissions, because they assign their risk grade to them, and this is when those amounts are mentioned that are mentioned in the audit acts or audit certificates. So those are the two problems that should be reviewed jointly. Either we have to do something with blocking, and on top of that, all those two issues should not be related, because this is where the violation of the taxpayers' rights is coming in. Thank you very much, Ms. Yuliya. I would like to give the floor to Ms. Natalia at Artemchuk, European Business Association. Am I being heard? You're being heard loud and clear. So let me continue the idea of Ms. Yuliya Drogovoz that we have to do something about blocking and audits. One of the suggestions of the European Business Association was to prohibit the blocking of tax invoices. Now the tax administration has the moratorium for tax audits lifted, nothing prevents them from coming to a business and reviewing the documents that should accompany the operations. Also, they may not go directly to the business, or they may just make a call. Well, I fully support you. There's something different with the customer services. All of them suffer from the blocking of tax invoices. But again, the good news is that there are more jobs created for the accountants and the lawyers. Yeah, but they don't add a lot of GDP to our country. This is why we have to pay attention to make sure that our economy is efficient. We have to avoid those artificial mechanisms that prevent the company from filling the state budget. For example, a company sells the goods or provide the services. They want to demonstrate their income, and the tax administration hinders it. But there is no logic behind this process. Yeah, another person is joining us online, Mr. Oleg. Let us hear what you have to say from Economic Expert Platform. Thank you very much, Mr. Ombudsman. Great recommendations. We've got familiarized with the report. We just need to continue on insisting on fulfilling all these recommendations. I would like to draw everyone's attention to two things that, in opinion of our analytical centers, are important to be implemented to avoid more of those situations with the tax audits and corruption risks. So first recommendation is reflected in the report is the quality KPI. In our opinion, without this, there may be no normal development of the state tax administration. It cannot operate when there are no normal milestones. Like, if the plan is a little bit bigger, they will just squeeze those amounts from the businesses, and thus they multiply the corruption risks and pressure over the businesses. We have to completely change this paradigm, this model, to replace this plan completely. It shouldn't be a milestone of a state tax administration. It should be replaced with the KPI related to the satisfaction of businesses. Also other indicators such as tax gain, because in every tax, the main task of tax administration should be reduction of the shadow part, the reduction of the lost taxes, and no plans. All the satisfaction of the customer and minimization of the gray share. And even then it wouldn't help if we don't fulfill another task. Mr. Gennadiy has mentioned that the agency headed by the acting director cannot operate properly, and as the resetting of other agencies demonstrated, resetting only works when there are international experts involved. So in our opinion, that's the joint opinion of our think tanks, it needs to be implemented. That's the draft law 9243, full resetting of the tax administration. When the international experts with their committees select the director, elect the director, they get the proper salaries and KPI. As I've mentioned, only such complex of activities may radically change the situation, because lately, within the last 10 years, after questioning of the businesses, among top 5 corrupted bodies are the customs and tax administration. Sometimes they swap places, sometimes someone takes second place, third place, but within the last 10 years the situation is without changes. So full resetting, only international experts, and implementation of quality KPIs, and it's important to be done, to have it done this year. In our opinion, the draft laws are already in the parliament, they only need to be signed. Hopefully they will be implemented. So we want to thank the participation of the office of the ombudsman. Hopefully your recommendations will be implemented and the resetting will happen. Thank you very much. Let's give the floor to Mr. Myroslav Laba, the community of Ukrainian businessmen. We would like to thank the office of the Business Ombudsman for this wonderful report, and I wanted to add something to what was already said. When you end up in a difficult situation, you're asking yourself a question: how did I end up there? And probably it's the ignoring of those requirements that the government set forth in the document that they've developed. So back in 2019, the government approved a number of activities consisting of more than 50 items that were related to criteria of evaluation of tax administration, related to riskiness of the audits, related to electronic services that could inform taxpayers on these or those risks. And for the time being, I can say that out of all those activities approved by the government, more than half is not fulfilled, or fulfilled just for a tick, you know, rather than for efficient control that would influence the state of affairs. Because for the time being, it's not only Ms. Tatiana who is acting director. Currently 90% of the directors of the central offices are acting directors. 90% of their directors of regional administrations are acting directors. So we don't have permanent management there. They are all acting. There is no like a real manager who is interested in achieving some results. So the tax administration is in some limbo, so to say. And if anybody doesn't like something, they have the director replaced and they appoint another acting director. For example, in Dnipropetrovsk region, there was one acting director appointed, and after 2 weeks there was another one assigned to this position. So we fully support the recommendations, and from the part of the union I would like to add something else. It's the trust between the business and the government. For the time being, this report prepared by the Business Ombudsman Council demonstrates the level of trust at 13, 15, 19%, and those indicators provided by the survey of the tax administration, they demonstrated the result of 70 results. So if the tax administration does the evaluation, it's 70%. When the businesses do the same evaluation, the figures are way lower. So on behalf of my organization, I would say that we fully support all of the report. So let me sum it up with Ms. Oksana Shvets, and then we will proceed to the Q&A session. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I would like to thank you for this opportunity to join this important discussion. In the American Chamber of Commerce, we work with more than 600 member companies, and in February we had a survey among them, and one of the results of the survey was the indicator that 80% of our member companies fully function after the 2 years of the full-scale war in Ukraine, and they don't only fully function but also pay taxes in Ukraine. This is why it's very important for our companies to deal with taxation. On an annual basis, we update the strategic indicators in our committee, and traditionally we've identified one of the key priorities as predictable, transparent tax policy. And also the businesses mentioned that it's important to ensure the opportunity of uninterrupted work of business during the work, and one of the aspects of this item is the tax inspections. This is why we actively keep track, specifically after the resumption of tax audits, we actively keep track of all of the problematic issues related to this topic, and we address them with relevant stakeholders. This is why we incredibly appreciate the input of Mr. Roman and his team for preparation of this great survey with highlighted aspects that are important for the businesses. And on our end, we would happily use all those details to communicate this information to all of the interested government agencies in Ukraine. Thank you very much. You've mentioned it properly about the unchangeable priorities. I hope I won't be banned when people who come and say that there is a problem with tax administration, there is a problem with tax audits, they were coming and telling the same 10 years ago. So when we come down from the philosophy to some concrete mundane things, what should we do to avoid this? What should we do to prevent this? As Mr. Oleg mentioned, we should reset the system following the example of Nabu, for example, but also what should we do to avoid this laughingstock? No, well, the question is basically to you. Well, the question depends on the signals that all those acting directors are getting now. So they're getting some wrong signals. Well, I wanted to ask not about the philosophy. Should they add more people to their staff? No, not at all. Look, so from Mazepa Gate, when there was a president's order, no Ukrainian legislation changed, no Ukrainian act changed, no Ukrainian law has changed. And our hopes in law enforcement agencies have significantly decreased. What I mean, the political signals in Ukraine are more real than any other which are and other regulations or laws supported by other initiatives. It all depends on the political will. We had a discussion on this topic with the management of the tax administration, the Ministry of Finance, and they say, you know, within decades in Ukraine we have this skeptic attitude of government to the business and businesses to the government. And as we see from this example of the presidential order, as my late grandma were telling me when there was no order in this in my room, she was asking, so who should make your bed? Is it Casey Jones? So it should all start not with the G7 ambassadors or God knows who. It is the obligation of the government itself and the government officials. First of all, they have to tell people to fulfill with the to comply with the tax code of Ukraine, which is not so bad. So in a number of ways we try to dilute those KPIs, draft laws, everything, anything just to preserve this manual control using those active directors. And another thought was about the trust. So we understand it as trust from the bottom up, like the citizens should trust the government and the businesses should trust to the tax administration. The government to achieve this, the government should trust their institutions in order to avoid this temptation to interfere all the time. So can anybody suggest anything else? How to transform the former priorities into existing priorities? What should we do in our countries so we don't gather here once again discussing the same problem? Probably we just need to meet more frequently and to give publicity to these problems. Well, Mr. Mann said exactly something like that. That social pressure and publicity, yes, so probably using the social pressure we may achieve it, because the businesses are open to the dialogue. The businesses, as the statistics of this report demonstrate, more than 90% voluntarily pay their taxes. Even those cases that end up in the courts, in the majority of the cases, the awards are made in favor of the companies. So the pressure of the government agencies is excessive, and the state should make this step forward in direction of the businesses through the system of KPI, reduce the KPI system in expectation of some plant indicators. This is my reflection, so to say. My business period is divided into two parts. Before Mr. Azarov, when he has become the head of tax administration, he was a mathematician who learned like how to count someone else's money. But I will never forget the 90s. That was incredible times. Everybody wanted to do entrepreneurs. Everybody wanted to open their businesses. I was working with the businesses and I didn't know we had tax administration. Like, I was paying taxes. I was doing the right thing. Everybody wanted to open their companies, open their businesses, and then these guys came, brought some order over there, and then I was teaching in the university. There was a fashion to be prosecutors. Everybody wanted to be prosecutor. Then everybody wanted to be tax administrators, but who will work with the businesses then? So we have to recreate this feeling like this country is for those who create and don't perform, so to say. We have to make a country where everybody wants to do something through startups, and then tax administration should come to them asking, how can we help? Yeah, that's some terrible question, right? When tax administration comes to you and they ask you, like, how can we help you? As soon as we are able to answer this question, like, you know, when we come to the restaurant, we want to be serviced, and the a person from tax administration is coming to us like, you're looking at me the wrong way, or you're servicing me the wrong way, and I'm telling them like, okay, so what is the way you're looking at us? What's the way you're looking at businesses? Like, let's go to Bulgaria, who has joined the European Union recently, so let's see how they work and why they don't even know what tax administration is there. So let's build a country like this. Well, let's not scare our Bulgarian partners about the acceptance certificates. Do we have any questions on the floor? If we do not, we will have a small comment. You were asking how can we help the businesses? I'm looking through this report and I'm asking why tax administration cannot publish the report. What are the most typical violations by the businesses? Like, the businesses commit mistakes here, and there. So it will be documented already. What should the businesses pay attention to? Recently we had a publication that covered the biggest violations, like lack of correspondence between the name of accountant and the name of accountant as it's contained in the databases. So it was like in a technical error. It was the biggest violation was the technical error. So you have suggestions like KPI should be implemented by state tax administration with some internal regulations. So how this can be done? Well, I think it's not only about the tax administration, it's about the state administration generally. We should resume the right to error, like both by the businesses and the government officials. In Ukraine, it's all criminalized. So we had 5 or 6 cases about the excise tax goods being concealed. For example, they have the fuel storage by that address, and once they indicate this address, like not 41A, but just building number 41, and they get fines again and again, while it's clear that it's a technical error there, but they get penalized in millions. And the head of the sector was saying, no, it's absurd, it's nonsensical. And they say, no, it's normal. I'm saying, like, how come it's normal? And they say, like, seeing the letter A where it does not exist, it's already discretion, and discretion is the first step to the corruption. So if that official makes a call and they ask, like, look, you might have omitted that A letter in your address, and after that they have the State Bureau of Investigation coming to them and initiating investigation in their regard. So it's a Soviet heritage combined with the lack of understanding of the functions of these newly established government agencies, who paralyze the government officials as well in their activities, and they just make that pass to the courts. Because, as they say, it's easier to penalize them immediately. We know that it's nonsensical, but it's easier to forward the case to the court, and then the court rescinds it all. But the judges are being paid for their discretion, and the tax administrators, they report about some violations that are added to, and then they add those violations in amount of million or two that are added to their KPIs, not real KPIs, but their internal KPIs as they understand them. So we were talking with the Prime Minister about this, as we need to create this yellow light circle. A Lithuanian representative of tax administration, they said we have green, yellow and red light. As Mr. Gennadiy has mentioned, when they call you and they say, when they say like maybe you need some of our help, like in Ukraine we only have like green zone, red zone and gray zone. And as the other speakers were mentioning, like they all create corruption risks. Like they tell you like whether you want your money to be stuck in the court for years and years, or we have this great consulting firm that can advise you for some minimum amount. So the system that does not replenish the budget directly, it just replenishes someone else's pocket. But to legitimize it all for the businesses and the representatives of the tax administration, we have to establish proper contact to solve all those problems, and it all should somehow be added to the legislation so it's not sabotaged by the newly established methods. I would, if we wrap it up, I would like to ask my young team to stand up. So if you have any more detailed questions, these are the people who are working on the report, who were preparing them directly, and you may talk to them after our press conference is over. Well, Mr. Myroslav wanted to add something. Yeah, Mr. Roman was mentioning the presidential order issued on the 23rd of January about the audit of the system, blocking of the tax invoices. The audit of the blocking system was immediate, but it's been 3 months that nothing is done yet. Another question, in response to the requirements of the businesses, they've created this website Pulse.gov.ua by the Ministry of Economy. I personally submitted a number of complaints, but I haven't gotten any response. Well, basically the service is operating, you can submit a complaint, but what happens next, you never know. And another issue is we're declaring that the tax administration turned into a joint legal entity. This is the joint system, but this joint system, like currently, is working in a way when one region takes one decision, another region takes another decision. The center is saying the regions were wrong in taking their decision, and we are like in a virtual life. Like in paper, on the paper it's one legal entity. They should come up with some integral decision, and we are being usually sent either to this region and then to that region, having all these joint support, client support service, which is called the Center for Customer Service, who should respond to all those issues. And then it turns out like business is facing the problem in Odessa region. Ms. Roman had a wonderful example in the report, like a company addressed Odessa tax administration 9 times, and only after they addressed the Council of Business Ombudsman, and only when Business Ombudsman tell the tax administration that the things are right there, they agreed with that, yeah, that there was nothing wrong. So we only have the like 4 minutes left. Good afternoon, Alena Vecherovska. And then my question was, how do you assess the initiative to create the wide business in Ukraine that would add to the tax code the possibility of ban of blocking the tax administration? We have to level the field for all of the businesses, just like invest nannies cannot protect the companies from the general investment climate. I think the tax nannies are not gonna change the situation. We have to change the approach rather than creating a reservation for the chosen ones. Mr. Gennadiy, and if Miss Yuliya has a desire, she was indicating that she wanted to add something. So what I wanted to add, doing business in Ukraine is expensive. Why? Because administration of Ukrainian business is very expensive comparing to other countries. When we take, for example, Ukraine, like not the more richest country, which is wage in the war on top of that. So to fulfill all of the requirements of our tax administration, well, it's terrible. In our Kiev office, where we have 128 people working, we have 6 or 8 accountants and finance people in order to do what? To do this tax administration. I would happily outsource it and pay something to other companies, but we cannot violate the law. Like, God forbid to have the Chamber of Trade and Commerce outsource something. So business administration is one of the key problems of Ukrainian economy. It's very expensive to do business in Ukraine. Miss Yuliya, are you hearing us? Yes, I'm hearing and seeing you. I was seeing you wanted to add something, so can you please summarize it all? And we will have to make part. I wanted to say that all of the changes, they start with changes to the legislation and to the tax code. We have to add some procedures, and to do this, well, just practically, what can be done? Well, what can those changes be? They can be some, like you say, this green, red and yellow lights. Secondly, we need, talking about administration and blocking, should we do something about this? Yes, we definitely need to. Is it going to increase the trust of the taxpayers to the government? Absolutely. We have to do something about that. Secondly, we have to really impose the principle of presumption of innocence. It shouldn't be declarative principle that is violated in practice. We should to add more procedures to make sure those rights are complied with. Also, I think that on top of everything else, on top of developing the procedure to identify and rectify the mistake, providing the taxpayer with the opportunity to correct it without penalties, we have to amend the section on the penalties and fines and procedure of their imposition. Also, when we talk about the tax checks, like, let's put it like this, talking about normal businesses, they are all in the course. And those who really evade taxation, like not the violators, but the fraudsters in this area, we haven't heard of them being brought to liability. And that's the huge problem, because if the country cannot really fight the fraudsters, they refocus their attention to the businesses who really operate honestly, justly, paying taxes, someone better, someone worse, but for the time being you cannot do your business without violating the legislation. No matter what you do, there is a human factor and other factors. It's impossible not to violate the legislation. This is why we're all violators. So when we have green light, no one is gonna have it, because even the biggest companies, biggest taxpayers were complaining that it's impossible for them one way or another. They're servicing businesses, they have a lot of accountants servicing them, advisors, consultants. Still the society is built in a way that there always will be violators, and we have to change it. So when you talk to the tax people, you say like, it's impossible, it's the businesses, the taxpayers who committed a small mistake, but they say it's their error and there is no mechanism to rectify this error. Yes, the taxpayer committed this error, but they cannot rectify it without any penalties, and this is the problem. We should provide them with opportunity to rectify their mistakes. We have to review the administration, and first of all, let's start with blocking. As soon as we do that, we are gonna do some great job, and we will achieve a number of objectives by then. Thank you very much, Miss Yuliya. We were discussing the eternal topic of the state redistributing our money. Hopefully we did it for a reason, and we will continue in just a couple of minutes. We will talk about the information threats or corruption information threats. Then we're gonna sort it out, so see you shortly.